Hello everyone, Mr. Science Mover here, and today is going to be my tutorial on editing skeletal meshes. Yay! I finally figured it out. So, hopefully this is not too long, but we'll see how long it goes. So, first thing we're going to do is open UModel to export our model that we'll be working with. So we're going to open the content folder of our Back 4 Blood installation. That will allow us to get all the materials that we need, so storing all the proper references. I'm going to hit OK to open that, and it might take a few seconds. And here we are. So we're going to look for the characters folder because we're going to be modifying a character today. And I'm actually going to be editing Holly. So I'm going to go into meshes. Now, Elite is the full body skins, so the base skin, the Zwat skin, those sorts of things. But we're going to be looking at base, which is the head, legs, and torsos that you can swap out for each other. And I'll be picking the default. So we're going to go ahead and export that default head. And I'm going to export it to my working tutorial directory, but put that wherever you want. Make sure we're exporting as PSK, and we don't really have to export LODs. I'll turn that off for now. And we'll hit OK. Make sure you select 4.26, and we'll go ahead and write all of those. So we can go ahead and close UModel. We're not going to need that again. Now we have our exported Holly model right here. Right there. So we're going to open up Blender and import that PSK model. Okay. And one important thing that you're going to want to do is make sure to check reorient bones so that your skeleton will look right and it will make it much easier for you to weight things onto it. So we're going to import that, and we're going to see our Holly. She's extremely big, but we do want to keep her that size for the purposes of proper scaling in game. So this is the base Holly head, but what I want to do is add a hat to her. So I actually have a model of a hat that I'm going to put on her, and it is an Isabel hat. So we're going to import our hat. It looks like this. So now what I want to do is I want to position that onto this model. So we're going to scale it up. We're going to have to rotate it. And then we want to move it to where the head is. And just generally position this properly on her head. Alright, so now that we have our head positioned in place, we want to first make sure that our model looks the way we want it to. So I might want to make this a bit smoother. If I make the face smooth, it looks kind of like this. The hat kind of looks a little jagged. We can add observe on that if we wanted to. But anyway, we will leave it the way it is for now. So now that we have our hat in our scene, we want to merge that hat with the original model. And so if I turn on the material, we can see that this hat has a nice Isabel texture, but that needs to go onto our Holly texture. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm actually just going to do this manually. I'm going to go to our Holly meshes base heads. We're going to go into the Holly head base color. We're going to open that up. So this is the texture that's used for Holly's head. And we can see that if we go to the head material and we assign that head texture, you can see this is what she looks like. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to take that texture, and this is a 2048 by 2048 texture. So we're going to copy it. We're going to create a new one that is twice the height and twice the width. And we'll paste this one in. So now we have plenty of space to work with. And what we're going to do in the rest of the space is we'll add our Isabel texture. So I'm going to open up that Isabel texture. That's going to be here. So we have our hat base color. And so we're going to take this and we're going to put that right up next to the head. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'll just line this up so that it's easier for the UVs later. And so now we have our full new UV, and we're going to save this. And we'll call it, actually we can just save over the old one. So we'll save it as Holly Head, and we'll save it right there. Yes, replace that one. Thank you. And one thing we also have to do is, you'll see that in that same folder we have a normal and a PBR. So we have to open both of these and shrink those as well. So once we've done that, we have our 4096 with our normal and our PBR. We can go back into our Blender and we're going to refresh this texture to the one that we just made. So you'll see that the texture looks a little weird, and the reason for that is because relative to the size of the image itself, our image that we used before is now a quarter of the size. So what we're gonna have to do is we have to go into the head UVs and we're going to select the head. You can see our head UVs right here, and we're going to open up that image. And now we want to realign these UVs to the repositioned UVs. So we're gonna select those, we'll scale down, and we'll position them over these guys. And if you want it to be exact, we can unselect these, and then we'll scale around the very center. And then we can grab X, negative 1024, grab Y, positive 24. And now I have to move these guys as well. Oops. Alright, so now that our Holly UVs are all in place, we can see she looks the same as she did before. We're going to put our Isabel hat in place. So now we want to make this Isabel hat not use its current texture anymore, but it's going to use the Holly head material. And so at first it's going to look a little weird because we have to do the same thing that we did for the Holly head. So we're going to take all of this UV, going to shrink these, And once we're satisfied with the position of these UVs, then we have to continue with joining these two meshes. So the next step is, once we make sure they're using the same material, we want to make sure that they have the same UV maps. So here we can see on Holly, her main UV is called UV underscore single. So we're going to go into the Isabel one, and we're going to rename her UV channel to the same as the one for Holly. And as for vertex colors, we can remove any of those. So now when we merge the two, now they're all part of the same mesh and they're using the same material and the same texture. So now what we can do is we have to give this hat some weight. So we have our skeleton right here, and we want our hat to be influenced by the Holly skeleton. So what we have to do is go into weight paint mode. We turn on solid, and then go into pose mode on the skeleton and select the bone that we actually want this hat to be weighted to. So we can tell which one we want if we select it and we rotate the head and it looks right. So let's pick maybe this bone. No. This bone. That one looks right. So this is a very basic implementation, but what we're going to do is we're going to go and press V to show all the vertices. And we're going to have to go back into edit mode and select just the Isabel mesh. And it looks like this one has a little bit of division here, so I'm actually going to select all of these and then merge them together. So once we have all of those selected, I'm going to remove doubles, merge all those, and then I'm going to, now we have our bone here selected, right? We selected the neck, and we have all of our vertices selected, so I'm going to hit assign to that bone. And you have to make sure you're in edit mode for that to work, but once we go back into weight paint, we can see that that bone is assigned 100% to these vertices of the Isabel hat. And now when we move our neck bone, our hat rotates as well. And that propagates all the way down the spine. And if we want, since this is a hat, we won't need any hair. So I'm going to go back into edit mode and just remove all this extra hair bits. So I actually went ahead and decided to remove her ponytail as well. So now we just have our Isabel head. And her hair is safely tucked underneath. So once we're done weighting all of our vertices, we're going to have to unorient the bones that we reoriented originally. And the reason we did that is because for things like the hands, having the fingers be in the correct orientation is actually really helpful for weighting. But we do have to revert it before we import it. So we're going to re-import that original and uncheck reorient bones. And we're going to see that the bones are like all mangled in weird locations. So what we have to do is take our new model and we want to actually make it a parent of the old skeleton. So we're going to clear the parent first, delete our reoriented skeleton. We're going to delete the old model, reparent, and then add an armature modifier. And that should give us proper orientations. So if I rotate this, we're still moving our head, and everything's looking all nice. It's just changing the orientations. So now I have all this, and the skeleton's weighted properly. I'm going to save this file in case we have to come back to it later. And now we have everything we need. So we're going to export as FBX, and we're going to export this as the model name that we started with. So that's going to be, let me see, it's going to be this name right here. So we're going to call it that .fbx, and in our export options, very important, we set our scale to 0.01, and under armature, we uncheck add leaf bones. Those two are extremely important, otherwise your model is going to look spaghettified. So we're going to export that as FBX, and now we're done for the Blender phase. So now we're going to want to go into an Unreal project. So you're going to create a basic Unreal project with nothing in it to start in 4.25.4, and the version is important. So what you're going to want to do is recreate the exact file structure that you have here in your exported folder, but in your project. And that will only be relevant for materials and such. But we can see we exported these mats. So basically any material that we had to use needs to have a proper reference. So we don't actually need this hero head, this hair M, but what we do need will be in characters, and there's some in shared, so we're going to need the shared eye materials, and also especially the Holly head mesh, head materials, head textures. So pretty much every material that we saw in the Blender file, we're going to want to recreate in the file structure here. So once that is all done, then we're going to import our new Holly model. So I have our Holly model here. We're going to import that into the proper folder in Unreal, and it's going to ask us a bunch of questions. Now, for skeleton, we actually have a specific skeleton that we want to use for characters, and you can generally find this in UModel, but the one that we want to use is called 3P Biped SK. That's the one that human characters use, and that's going to be located under this base hero folder. The rest of these don't really matter for right now, except for the physics asset, which we're going to say create physics asset, and then hit import. Now, once all of that is imported, you'll see it generated a bunch of stuff alongside your base model. So what we're going to want to do is make sure that all of these are actually in the correct place. So our Holly eye material is actually in a different folder. So we're going to go and find where that is, or where we created our Holly eye material. And it's going to be under Heroes Holly. I believe it's here. Yes. So Holly meshes shared. So it should be right here. So we're going to actually just take that, since we didn't have it there yet, and we'll move it there. We have our holly hair material, which I already have here, our lashes material. So we can delete that one. We can delete the lashes material. We have a shared eye occlusion material. Okay, so it's under character shared materials. And we're going to have the shared eye occlusion material and the shared teeth material. So we're going to move both of those to their respective folder, which is going to be character shared materials. So we have characters shared, and we want a materials folder here, which I forgot to make. And we're going to put them in there. So we take both of these and we put them in that folder. And now we want our holly head material to be in the materials folder. I believe I already have one there. Yes, so I can delete this one. And I think I have, yes, I have the texture already too, so I can delete that one. And the last thing is we want to make sure that the physics asset is named properly. We're going to go to back to the head. And for this part, we actually have to go to the game files. We're going to go to characters, heroes, holly, meshes. Oh, so here we have our 3P holly PA. PA means physics asset. So it's under characters, heroes, holly, meshes. So we actually want to name this the same as that one. We're going to rename it 3P holly PA. And then we're going to put that at the right spot under here. And so now we're going to Control-Shift-S to save everything in the position that it's in. And we want to reassign the materials that we just moved. So we can see actually we have slot names here. So holly hair material, we're going to replace that with the holly hair material that we already had. The holly head material. And the lashes. Now it's not important at all that any of these other ones have textures. These are just so that we can get the relative path correct. So once we have all the textures, all the materials mapped correctly, we can see our custom textures working. We're going to save that. What else we're also going to do is we're going to scroll down to our LODs. Now, we're going to start off with 0 LODs, or 1 LOD, which is LOD 0. And we're going to have a bunch of these settings to generate some more. We don't have to worry about any of these right now, but what we do want to worry about is the build settings, and we want to check all of these to false and hit apply changes. And then we're going to bump the number of LODs up to the number of LODs that this model has. Now for a character model, that's going to be 5. For a model like the ogre you see in the background, that's 6. It changes based on the model, and it will tell you in UModel when you open it up. So I can actually before we do this, I want to use this specific hero LOD settings. Now this data asset is ripped straight from the game. I will leave this in the description, but you do have to use this exact hero LOD settings file to generate the LODs, or else they won't have the right number of bones in them. And that file is actually not really important where it goes, but it goes in this LOD settings folder right here. So it's under characters, heroes, LOD settings, and it goes right there. So you drop that there, and then you reference it from here. And once that's in place, then you bump your LODs up to 5 and apply changes. And it will generate you some LODs based on that file. So it's regenerating your LODs. And now you have some nice 5 different LODs. And it was pretty easy. So we have our physics asset assigned properly. We have our skeleton assigned properly. We have our materials assigned properly. And we have our LODs. So make sure we Control S, save this model. And now we can cook. Actually, almost made an oopsie there. We were using the wrong physics asset. So we want to make sure we're using the right physics asset. And we'll save that. Cool. So now we're using this physics asset. I accidentally had 2. So now everything's in place. So now we're going to have to go into File and hit Cook Content for Windows. And now we're doing the cooking process. Hopefully everything cooks properly, and then we can edit our file once that's done. Now that we're done cooking, we're going to go into our folder for our Unreal project. We're going to go into Saved, Cooked, and we should have all of our content right here. Now I know we set up all those materials and the skeleton and the physics asset and the LOD settings, but we're not going to be importing any of those into the game. The reason we had to create those files is so that our skeleton had references to the physics asset given the proper configuration. So what we're actually going to need is, all we're going to need is the Holly model. So we'll go into Holly, Meshes, Base, Heads. We're going to need this, and we're going to need the Textures folder as well, because we did give it custom textures. So we will take these, and basically these files are our mod right now. So I'm going to go into our working folder, and I'm just going to call this full mod. We'll put these here. Those are the only files that we need. Now, this part is the part that took forever to figure out, which I'm going to walk through right now. It's actually not that hard, but what we're going to want to do is open up HXD. This is going to be a little bit of hex editing, but it's pretty easy. It's just a few bytes in a few places. So we're going to go to that folder. We're going to open up our UEXP. We're going to open it, and this is where all of our LODs are stored. What we want to do is go all the way to the bottom of the file, and right here we're going to see this sequence is how it should end the file. We have an 05, which tells us how many LODs there are, and right before that 05 there should be 1, 2, 3, 4 bytes of 0. Now we're going to want to copy that and make sure that we have actually 12 bytes of 0 right here before the 5. And now we want to scroll up, and for every single LOD we have, we want to put 4 more bytes of 0 after the LOD. So that is a little bit hard to discern, but on average, the LODs take up about 1/2 of the previous LOD. So like for instance, if I just jump from the top of the file straight to the middle, I should see the end of the first LOD somewhere around here. And so we can see, we know it's the end of the LOD because we'll be able to see a specific sequence, which I'm looking for right now. So here we have actually this whole chock full of zeros. Basically the way that I like to look at them is we have our bones. So we have our vertices, we have our faces, our bones, etc. And it should be at the end of the last set of faces. This part is the hard part. But trust me, it'll be over soon. Alright, so now I've finally reached the end of LOD1. It's about halfway through the file. And we see this sequence, which is 4 zeros. Then we have a 1. And 5 more sets of zeros, another 1. And 3 more zeros. Now, what we really could do, probably from the start, is take this and just search for that. We're going to search for hex values. We're going to search for that. So actually, that gets us to the end of LOD 0. So that might be a good strategy. I'll leave this in the comments so that, in the description, so that you guys can actually just search for that. Because I think that will be the same for each one. So now we have 4 before the 1, but we actually want 8. And then we're going to press F3 to look for it again. We'll go to the next LOD. That actually works. So we want to insert another 4. Search for the next one. Insert another 4. Search for the next one. And we insert another 4. And at that point, we've reached the end. The last LOD is what we changed at the beginning. So we can now save the file in HXD, close that out. We have a dot back. We don't need it. We can delete that. Now we want to go into UAsset GUI, and we're not actually going to even do anything in UAsset GUI, but this is a pretty important part because it's going to reassign the size of the UXP in the UAsset file. So the UAsset keeps track of how big the UXP is, but we haven't updated the UAsset to those new zeros that we just added. So we're going to open this UAsset. It's going to give us a warning. It says failed to maintain binary equality. This is actually important because doing this means that the UAsset was not configured properly. So by opening this and then saving it, our UAsset is now configured properly. So if we attempt to open it again, we're not going to get that error because now it's assigned properly. And so that's the important part. So we can delete our backs, and now we have our textures, we have our skeleton, and that is our mod finished. So now what we need to do, we can close out of everything that we were working on, and we go to our game files. Now, before we do this, I would recommend that you make a backup. So I have right here a head_00.zip already backed up. But if you're worried, we can have a 7-zip add to archive head00 backup. I like to just keep those so I don't have to re-extract the entire game if I want to switch mods or use the original data for whatever reason. So then we go into head00, and we're just going to actually just copy those and put them in here. We'll replace the files, and we should be all done and good to go. So I'm going to launch the game and we'll see how it looks. Alright, so now that we're loaded in, let me log in and we'll see what our new hat looks like. Beautiful. It's a little bit shiny, but you know, if we wanted to fix that, we could change the normal texture. So we didn't actually make any changes to the normal texture corresponding to the hat. So that would be how we would fix that. But for now, I think it looks pretty good. So we have that on. Let's go ahead and we're going to try to see ourselves in third person. There we go. How about that? think it would look nice with a little bit of PBR, a little bit of normal changes, but hey, the model's there. Just needs a little bit of tender love and care. And that's it. So hopefully you guys can make some cool mods with this, and let me see what you guys do. Peace.